Welcome back to Daytime here on Rogers TV. Here, we're speaking of conflict. We're like pushing each other out of the way. Oh, nice one. Listen, we all experience conflict every day of our lives in some way or another, and we all experience it differently. That's an interesting thing. Well, let's find out who you are in the conflict. And we're joined by Ruth Sermon from CanMediate International, who's going to walk us through it. It's good to see you, Ruth. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you again.
Great topic today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something that affects every single one of us, no matter who you are. And the interesting thing is you said to us that there is a process that happens all of the time. What do you mean by that?
We find ourselves in situations on a reasonably regular basis where things are not going as well as they could. Mm-hmm. So start out with a conversation, somebody makes a comment, I take it personally, or I kind of do the double take and pull back and go, like, what did you mean by that? And then you see that, you react, and so we get into this dance. But part of that dance is that as human beings, we have, over the period of our lifetime, however long we've been kicking around this earth, evolved kind of a default style of dealing with conflict. So have you ever met anybody with a short fuse?
Of course.
Oh
yeah,
my
certainly.
gosh, yeah.
Anybody who just kind of sucks it in and holds on to it, and it festers, and they're a slow burner.
I don't know.
Don't
I don't know. I don't
Don't-
know anyone like that anywhere ever. Okay, you're a slow burner.
Yeah, I'll
And,
admit that.
and it's not that one is right or one is wrong, they're just different.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, I mean, those are some of the more visible signs of that default conflict blueprint that we have. There's a lot of other ones. So part of what is often a bit of an issue for people is that we're not really aware necessarily of what that blueprint is, because
Right.
a lot of it is happening at a subconscious level. So if something happens, I react in the way I would normally react, and context comes into it as well, because I may react one way at work, I may react totally differently at home. And or out with
true.
friends, like if the comment was made by one of my kids versus made by my boss, often totally different reaction. So our blueprint has evolved over as a way of helping us figure out what to do, but a lot of it is happening without us really being aware of it.
So
and that's the problem.
How, Ruth, is this blueprint created? When does it happen in our lifetime, and what sort of things affect it?
Let me ask you a question. Think back in your life. What's the first conflict that you remember?
My parents.
Okay. How old were you?
Oh, like very young. They used to, if they ever got
4?
into an argument or whatever, they'd go in their room and shut the door and pretend and they'd think we didn't know, but
Right.
we all knew as
And
kids.
what were you thinking while they were in the room with the door
I
shut?
was thinking Mom and Dad are in a fight.
Right. And because I've had similar experiences, what did I do? Right? Because
Oh, yeah,
kids are
that's
very
true.
egocentric in that sense. But however old you were, one from you, Derek.
I would probably like getting bullied in school, maybe
Okay.
in senior kindergarten, grade 5, that kind of thing.
Okay, so somewhere between the age of 5 and 10.
Yeah.
And you would have been.
I would say on the younger end of that.
Right. So 4, 5, 3,
Again,
4,
like
5, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's more. I remember that side of it for some reason.
Well, the interesting piece is that as a 5-year-old involved in a situation, what do you have to work with? You have 5-year-old wisdom, 5-year-old logic, 5-year-old knowledge, and 5-year-old skills. And so you process, excuse me, you process what's going on for you using all of that you have available at the
Right.
age of 5. Now, if that's a conflict that you can pull up as an adult in that millisecond when I asked you, that conflict had, or that situation had, a reasonably profound influence because it's hung around for however many years.
Right.
I'm 55 years old. I can tell you about one that was when I was 8. That means for 47 years I've been hauling this around with me. And with my 8-year-old logic, I dealt with it. The thing is that when we go through those situations, they get filed in a file in our head of this is how you deal with this kind of a situation. And we accumulate a lot of those files over the years. The really profound ones, though, often have an influence that's beyond what just a minor situation would have. And so what I realized when I started to look at this was that as a 55-year-old woman, there are times when I'm making decisions based on 7-year-old logic, 7-year-old wisdom, 7-year-old skills. This is not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
So,
we talked about it in the green room a little earlier, and you asked me, and I shared that bullying thing, and you said, how did you react? I said, well, you know, I ran away from the situation. Right. And that's kind of what, you know, I let it, it sort of festers, right? I don't attack it right away.
It's safer.
Yeah.
Not to make yourself vulnerable, not to put yourself out there. So in that context, when we talk about what happens if there are aspects of our conflict blueprint that we're not all that happy with, there are ways of changing them. You know, for instance, if I were to say to you, and this is a really shortened and simplified version, and some people need professional help in order to do it.
Right.
Some people can do it on their own. But if I were to say to you, in that situation where bullying was going on, or where your parents were fighting behind the door, and you chose a particular way of dealing with it, what else could you have done? Could you rewrite that situation in your head where you actually dealt with it differently? And show yourself that there is another way of doing it. And sometimes we also need to forgive that child if we're carrying around a whole lot of, oh, I should have, you know, the would have, could have, should have.
Right.
And say, you know what, that child I was dealing with things as best they could at the time. And given similar circumstances now, I'm not bound to do what they did.
The interesting thing is listening to you, as we got older, they always talked to us. Like, we always were very well aware. Like, they would explain to us, you know, oh, by the way, Mommy and Daddy were having a discussion because, you know, they didn't go into great detail, but they explained things. Which, would that explain why I'm more of a, like, I'll say, you know, this happened today. You know, where, like I say, that's our main difference, Derek and I, is I'll just say it and he will fester, right?
Well, and it's more because what you're used to. I mean, I'm used to, or I grew up where people didn't necessarily always talk about it. And so I can remember closed doors.
Yeah.
And, you know, it may have been my parents, but it may have also been other people. But I remember one incident in particular, going to a friend's for dinner. And in our house, dinner was, excuse me, dinner was time when you talked about the good things that had happened today. And we had great times at dinner, but dinner was not the time where you brought up things that were negative so much. And so I remember lots of happy family dinners. But I went to this friend's house and they had a different pattern in their house. And so we're sitting having dinner, and this was a big thing, was to be able to go to somebody else's house for dinner. And I was actually supposed to sleep over, which was huge, you know, because I was 7 or 8. And her parents got into this big, like, yelling match at dinner, and I was sitting there with that deer in the headlights going, what is wrong with these people? You know, like, they don't know how to do it.
It's dinner time.
Yeah.
Exactly. They don't know how to do it. And I was so upset I got up and went home.
Wow.
And, you know, because, I mean, they didn't have it right.
How old were you?
7 or maybe 8.
Wow.
And so I still remember it. And so in that context, I often will find myself when people start screaming and yelling at each other going, oh, they just don't know how to handle it.
Either that or I'm getting out of here.
They need a mediator. They need a mediator.
And I guess you can't really do that anymore, can you, Ruth? Right? People are like, where's she going?
My mediator is leaving.
Oh, no, it's only on the inside. But the reality is that we carry this with us. And so there'll be aspects of our default conflict blueprint that will support our success.
Right.
You know, times when we have resolved things well, and we've seen how that worked. And there may be other aspects that aren't necessarily, and may actually be getting in our way. In workplaces, conflict management has become such a core competency, especially for managers.
Certainly.
That the more we know about how we deal with conflict, what do I bring to the table when I come in, even as a manager, to help, you know, my employees deal with the situation, or as a parent when I'm trying to help my kids. So.
Ruth, as always, great topic. You know, makes everyone at home is thinking back to their childhood right now and going, so that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just quickly, some courses coming up.
We've got the whole Power to Resolve program coming up the week of November the 29th to December the 3rd. So one session is on Discover Your RQ, your resolution quotient, and which includes the conflict blueprint. The I'm Okay, It's Everybody Else Who Needs Help course is, I believe, on the Monday. All of the details are on the website, and I'm assuming they've got
CanMediate.com. Thank you, my dear. We'll see you in a month's time. It's great to talk to you, as always.
Thanks,
that
Ruth.
was very interesting.
I know.
For sure.